I'm back, and it's time to jump back into these 2020 preview and game-by-game predictions for all these teams that we've been doing after taking most of last week off. I think the only video I uploaded on this channel last week was the Tennessee preview. Check that out if you haven't already. Of course, I was on vacation last week. I did do some live shows over on the live channel. Subscribe to that second channel if you're not. That's where all the live shows are. There'll be a link down there to the second channel. I do 5 or 6 live shows a week over there. Make sure you check it out. But didn't upload much last week. But back home now. Time to get back on the grind. Plus, I'm feeling good about the odds of us having a 2020 college football season. My feelings, my percentages are headed up after really over the last couple of months. It seemed like it was trending the wrong way. I don't really have any news or anything I've heard lately to make me change my mind. It's just for whatever reason over the last few days, I started to feel a lot better about the possibility of us actually having some college football in 2020. I know we're all crossing our fingers. That's what we all want. And for whatever reason, the last couple of days, I'm starting to feel more positive about it. Let's get into today's video, though. A preview and a game-by-game prediction for none other than Ohio State University. Let's go! Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also. And in addition to all that as well, hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know that I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. That's right. Some of them are even watchable. This one being an Ohio State preview, I have a feeling that it will be. That's right. I have it on pretty good authority that this will fall into the watchable category. Ohio State Buckeyes. Let's go. All right, RBG, Mr. Griffin, and Raylan W. both requested this preview video over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. Click the link that says support the channel. Check out the Patreon page. Help support the show and what I'm trying to do here. These two guys wanted to see a preview for Ohio State, so if you ask, Uncle Lou will deliver for you. Yeah, so up today, we are going to do the Buckeyes. Thank you guys for supporting the channel over there on the Patreon page. It really means a lot to me. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do for the two of you. It would be an honor and a privilege. Of course, Ohio State head coach Ryan Day, first year last year, 12-0 during the regular season, and really was never challenged or tested during the regular season. One of the most dominant regular seasons we've seen in a while. Now, everyone talks about LSU last year, and for good reason, for great reason. The 15-0, ran through the playoffs, they blew out a ton of people. But LSU actually had more close games last year, especially during the regular season, than Ohio State did. Ohio State really didn't have any. Ohio State Auburn was, or LSU Auburn was a pretty good game. Of course, LSU Alabama, even the LSU Florida game was interesting for a while. Ohio State completely dominated the regular season schedule last year. And listen, here they come. They're typing right now with the whole, who had they play? Oh, Ohio State went 12-0. Oh, what did they do? Who had they play? Ohio State had a pretty tough schedule. Forget the non-con. I think their best non-con game was what, Cincinnati? Now, Cincinnati wasn't a terrible team. They were ranked. I think they only had 2 losses or something. They finished the season ranked. And, of course, they had to play Michigan and Penn State and then Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game and a couple other ranked teams throughout the Big Ten during the season. So Ohio State did not have a quote-unquote cupcake schedule. I really don't know where the idea that anybody in the Big Ten is a legitimate conference, folks. Is it as good as the SEC? I don't think so, but it's not the ACC either, okay? I mean, the Big Ten is a legitimate football conference. There are some legit big boys within the Big Ten. So for Ohio State to do what they did during the regular season last year was impressive to people that know and pay attention to college football. And believe it or not, that would be me. I was impressed with Ohio State during the regular season. Of course, they won the Big Ten title game, 13-0, and then lost to Clemson in an epic first-round playoff game. Probably the second best first-round playoff game we've seen. Of course, the Georgia-Oklahoma game from a couple of years ago, probably the best playoff game we've had so far in the playoff era. This one, very close. Ohio State jumped out to a lead there in the first half. Clemson was able to claw back in the second half and win it there at the end with Ohio State and Justin Fields throwing an interception late in the fourth quarter. Sort of sealed the deal for Clemson, who then went on, of course, to lose to LSU in the title game. Very impressive, not just what Ohio State did last year, but what they've done really over the last 10 or 11 years more on that in a second. But let's talk a little bit about Ryan Day. Of course, we know he was at Ohio State under Urban Meyer, and when Urban Meyer quit / retired / made up a fake health condition to get the hell out of Dodge at the end of the 2018 season, Ryan Day was promoted to head coach there at Ohio State. Where was Ryan Day at prior to becoming the head coach at Ohio State? Well, you go all the way back to like 2015, 2016. He was actually in the NFL. He worked up under Chip Kelly. He was a QB coach for a while. In 2017 is when he got his start at Ohio State as co-offensive coordinator. Then in 2018, offensive coordinator and primary play caller. And then, of course, in 2019, promoted and replaced Urban Meyer. So sort of a brief history of Ryan Day, where he's been, where he's come from, sort of the Chip Kelly, Urban Meyer tree of football. That's what you have. What has Ohio State done over the last 10 or 11 years? Well, you already know they have the one national title back in, was it 2014 or 15? But other than that, 8 straight years, Ohio State has won 11 or more games. That's hard to do. And that's over 2 different coaching staffs, too, with Ryan Day now taking over. To win 10 or more games is hard. But to win 11 or more games 8 years in a row, Ohio State's been on one hell of a run. Primary reason? Recruiting. Let's take a look at that now. I like to do this with every single team. I go back 4 years because that's primarily what makes up a team's current roster. I know you got players that transfer out. You got players that transfer in. You got players that leave early for the NFL. You got injuries. You got all sorts of things. Players get kicked off the team, whatever the case. But generally speaking, if you look at the last 4 recruiting classes, that'll give you an overall idea of the type of talent that a team is working with. We'll start with the most recent class that just ended this past February, the 2020 class. 5th in America, 1st in the Big Ten. 2019, the worst of the 4 classes, 14th in America, 3rd in the Big Ten. That was sort of a strange year for Ohio State. They were limited in the number of recruits that they could sign, and you had the coaching, sort of the coaching transition issue type deal and situations with Urban Meyer going on. 2018, 2nd in America, 1st in the Big Ten. 2017, 2nd in America, 1st in the Big Ten. So the number 1 recruiting class in the Big Ten, 3 of the last 4 years, 3 top 5 classes in the last 4 years, and the worst class they've had was 14th in America. What does that tell you? Ohio State is absolutely loaded with talent at all 3 levels on both sides of the ball. They've got plenty of talent. Offense, we'll start there and talk about the offense. Of course, this year, all starts with Justin Fields. He made his debut as the starter at Ohio State last year after transferring out from Georgia. I'm not going to talk a lot about that in this video. My thoughts and feelings on that entire situation are crystal clear and very well known if you've spent any time around this channel at all. Kirby Smart made the absolute wrong decision, one of the worst wrong decisions probably in the history of college football. Choosing Jake Fromm over Justin Fields. There will never be a valid explanation or logical excuse for what happened, but it happened. Ohio State was the beneficiary. The guy was absolutely unbelievable. Last year, 3,300 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions, a 67% completion percentage, 484 rushing yards, and 10 touchdowns. That's 51 total touchdowns for a guy making his first year as a starter. He was a true freshman at Georgia when we wasted him on fake punts and quarterback draws for no reason 3 or 4 times a game. Ohio State decides to actually let him play quarterback, and he puts up 51 touchdowns. An absolute. He would have won the Heisman last year in almost any other year in recent memory, were it not for the year that Joe Burrow had. It was just unbelievable what Justin Fields did last year. He's back. He's a junior now. Probably his last year in college. This is his 3rd year out of high school, so after this year, he'll be eligible to enter the draft. He's a Heisman favorite heading into 2020, and he deserves it. Now, at running back, they lose Dobbins, and that is a huge loss for Ohio State. That's a big loss. No doubt about it. No question about it. Master Teague, he's been there for a while. He hasn't been all that impressive to me. I'll just be honest. I was high on him coming out of high school. He was a kid Georgia was looking at. Georgia wanted him. Didn't go our way. I was impressed with him. He hasn't really lived up to it yet at Ohio State. Now, I know it's been in a backup role, but plenty of teams play 2 and even 3 running backs nowadays, and the 2nd and 3rd guys look impressive. That hasn't been the case, at least for me, when I've watched Master Teague. Now, Ohio State obviously realizes that too. They go out and they get Trey Sermon from Oklahoma. He transfers in. I have been impressed with Trey Sermon. Now, he had some injury issues, and he was another guy that's been sort of stuck on the depth chart out at Oklahoma behind some pretty good running backs, Rodney Brooks, and some other guys out there. I think he can push Master Teague for that starting spot, and at the least, you'll have sort of a 2-headed situation there at running back. So do I think either one of these guys is as good as J.K. Dobbins? No. But I think the combination of the two can give Ohio State everything they had with J.K. Dobbins. So I'm not sure Ohio State really loses anything net in the running back department heading into 2020. They've got some young guys too. Like I said, they've been recruiting like mad. So they've, Chambers, McCall, they've got some young kids too. So they're not hurting at the running back position, in my opinion. Wide receiver Chris Olave returns. He was absolutely lights out last year. Ohio State's always got great skill position players. That'll be the case again in 2020, led by Chris Olave. 12 touchdowns last year, 17 yards per catch. Unbelievable. Wilson, many other young guys. A lot of these guys didn't play a lot last year because of what else Ohio State had at the wide receiver position. But again, if you go back to recruiting, Ohio State has got a ton of highly ranked skill position players at the wide receiver position. I don't think that's a position that Ohio State will have to worry about this year, outside of maybe some experience. I do expect some young wide receivers to play for Ohio State, but running back and wide receiver are two positions that you got to feel pretty comfortable about playing a freshman, in my opinion. Obviously, quarterback, left tackle, defensive back. In my opinion, anyway, these are positions that the transition is much more difficult from high school to college. A running back, a wide receiver, I think those two positions translate pretty easily from high school to college, so I expect Ohio State to be lights out at the wide receiver position again. Offensive line, things just go from good to better there. This could be the best offensive line I think Ohio State has had in the last few years. They get almost everybody back. They have a 5-star freshman and a sophomore battling for the only two positions, or the only one position that they have to, the two positions that they have to fill. You get 3 back, Davis, Myers, and Munford. They return. The other 2 positions, 4 and 5-star guys, just loaded offensively. I don't have very many questions about Ohio State, really on either side of the ball, but particularly on offense. I think Justin Fields is going to have another amazing year. I think he'll find plenty of wide receivers to catch the ball. I'm happy with what they did at the running back position with Master Teague and Trey Sermon, and their offensive line, like I mentioned, could be the best we've seen there in quite some time. Ohio State offensively should keep on rolling in 2020 in a very similar fashion to what we saw in 2019. You look over on the other side of the ball on defense. Now, they lost a lot of talent over there. No doubt about it, particularly in the secondary. You hear a lot of arguments about this whole DBU thing. Tends to be LSU fans and Florida fans arguing. Ohio State, in my opinion, is right there in the mix with those two schools. It seems like they're putting first-round picks into the NFL from their defensive secondary almost every single year. Last year was no different. So you got some talent there you got to replace. 3 of your starters are gone out of that secondary. Plus, you had a guy kicked off the team for rape. I'm not going to browbeat you about that. These 80, 100 kids on these teams. Lots of teams have players that get in trouble, my Georgia Bulldogs included. I hope the best for that kid. I hate to see anybody get kicked off, but a situation like this, you really don't leave the team with much choice. So you're going to have to play some young and experienced guys in the secondary now. You got this cornerback, Shaun Wade. He's a lockdown type guy. He's probably your next premier cornerback that you're going to see come out of Ohio State. He's capable of locking down just about anybody in America. Defensive line, you lose Chase Young. You are not replacing him. Listen, you say what you want. I don't care about the recruiting, the talent, the experience, the size of the guys, whatever it is. I can't talk like I did about Chase Young all last year and then just act like you can snap your fingers and replace him. Chase Young, to me, the best player in all of college football last year, hands down. Joe Burrow had an amazing season, no doubt about it, and he deserved to win the Heisman based off, especially the way they hand it out now. It's basically an offensive award. Chase Young had one of the most dominant seasons I've seen in a long, long time. The guy, at times, was absolutely unblockable. I spent all year talking about how much I liked watching Chase Young. I can't do that and then act like it's not a big deal to lose him. You're not replacing Chase Young. You're going to miss him. No doubt about it. No question about it. Do you lose Malik Harrison, too, I think? Anyway, senior Baron Browning, he's going to take that role. We'll see how he does. Inside linebacker, Tuff Borland. I like him. He's a star in the making. I think everybody already knows that. You're loaded at the linebacker position with upperclassmen. I'm not concerned about your linebacker position. We'll see what you have that can replace, not replace Chase Young, but that can help you make up some of that production you're losing by losing Chase Young. The guy was a sack machine, a tackles for loss machine, unblockable. You're going to have to get creative along the defensive line, I think, to recreate the numbers you had last year defensively. The people that are going to help you do that, Cooper, Harrison, and Smith, all 3 or one of those 3 or 2 of those 3, potentially all of them could be dominant. We'll see. I think you need at least one of them to step up. You need somebody that another team's got to worry about double teaming. That was Chase Young last year at the outside position. We'll see how these guys do sort of on the inside. Again, I don't have a whole lot of questions about Ohio State's defense outside of some experience in certain areas. But talent-wise, how can you question anything on Ohio State's roster talent-wise? I don't think you can. Ryan Day proved last year he's capable of picking up right where Urban Meyer left off in terms of competing within the Big Ten. If I have a question about Ohio State defensively, I guess it's, does it take them a few weeks to sort of gel and come together? Is it a situation where we see a lot of different combinations of guys playing in the first couple of weeks of the season until the coaching staff sort of figures out what that best combination is? Now, that looked like a potential problem a month ago. It looks a lot less like a problem now because, of course, you're not playing Oregon. And in fact, let's go ahead and just put the schedule up on the screen. I'll talk about that and we'll go through the schedule. All right, of course, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have officially canceled all their non-conference games. Could that change between now and the start of the season? Yes and no. I think it's possible that if things turn around, the Big Ten, the Pac-12 have some sort of a change of heart. Maybe they go out and schedule some non-con games. I don't think it will be falling back on the original schedule, though, because I think the other teams could be busy doing the same thing. For example, you play Bowling Green week 1, or you were supposed to. The Big Ten has officially canceled that game as it's not a conference game. Well, if the Big Ten changes its mind again in 2 weeks and says, okay, we will play conference games, what if Bowling Green has already gone out and found another opponent for week 1? So I do think it's possible maybe the Big Ten and the Pac-12 decide to add back in some conference games, but if they do, I think it's likely it will be teams that are not on the schedule now. So for the purposes of this video, I mean, you got no week 1 game. Week 2 at Oregon, that game's not going to be played. Both those conferences have decided to cancel the non-con. I did an Oregon preview already, so in case you're curious for some particular reason and you didn't watch the Oregon video, at the time when I made the Oregon video, these decisions had not been made. So I did talk about the Oregon and the Ohio State game. If you're curious for whatever reason what I thought about it, you can go watch that video, but I'll just tell you now, I picked Ohio State to beat Oregon week 2, but again, as of today, that game is not being played. Same for week 3 when you host Buffalo. So your 3 non-con games that aren't being played, Bowling Green, Oregon, and Buffalo. If I was picking those 3 games, I would pick you to win all 3 of them. I don't think you would lose any of those. Oregon, of course, would be a great game and one you're capable of losing if Oregon plays good and you slip up or whatever the case, but I did pick you to win. You'd probably be 3-0 if you were playing those. Not going to spend any more time talking about them, though, because as of right now, like I said, officially, they're canceled. All right, then you start your conference schedule at home against Rutgers. That's a win. Rutgers has been one of the worst teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the Power 5. Really for the last 5 or 10 years, since Greg Schiano was there the first time, right? Since he left, actually. You should beat Rutgers at home. Shouldn't be much of a problem. Shouldn't be a close game. That takes you into your bye week. Come out of that, you host Iowa. Iowa is a team that seems to beat somebody every year, don't they? They beat Minnesota last year. They've given other top teams fits in the past. They play stingy defense. They play slow on offense to try to limit what the opponent can do. I don't think they're beating you in your place, though. I think Iowa actually takes a little bit of a step back this year from what they were last year. I think the Buckeyes get the win at home over Iowa. You're undefeated and on a roll. Now, back-to-back road games, I say this every single time. Back-to-back road games are tough. I don't care what conference you're talking about. I don't care if you're talking about a good team playing 2 bad teams, whatever. It is tough to travel 2 weeks in a row. These are college kids. These aren't professional athletes who get paid to do this for a living. They're not there forever to get used to this kind of travel. A lot of times you're talking about kids who've never been on an airplane in some cases. So it's just a lot of weird things that can happen with road games. So you got back-to-back conference road games. That's always tricky. Your first one is on the road at Michigan State. They were a huge disappointment the last couple of years. I did like their defense, but offensively, they were just not able to get anything going over the last couple of years, and it cost a man his job. So they're breaking in a new coaching staff this year. Yes, you have to play them there. Yes, I still think there's some talent on the defensive side of that ball. No, I do not think they have what it takes to beat you. I just don't. I think Ohio State is the cream of the crop, the elite of the elite in college football right now. If you want to name, just pick a number, 5 teams, 6 teams, whatever, that are, in your opinion, are the top programs, the top teams right now, 5, 6, whatever number you want to settle on. If Ohio State is not in that group, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're capable of beating anybody that you play on any given day, period. You win on the road at Michigan State. Then you got to turn around the very next week, go on the road at Penn State. Now, I don't know what's happening with fans, okay? I say this in every video. I've got no idea. This game clearly favors Penn State more if the place is full, right? If it's a sellout, if it's one of these night game situations or whatever. Without fans, that does cut down the impact of a home field advantage. I have no idea what's going to happen. I do these previews, though, based on what we know for a fact now, when the video is made. And as of now, I haven't heard Penn State say anything about fans in the game, at the game. So I'm going to assume, for the purposes of this video, packed house. I've already done the Penn State preview and prediction. So if you're an Ohio State fan and you saw that video, you're mad already. But I think Penn State beats Ohio State at home this year. At home for Penn State, I mean. I think Ohio State is a better team. I think Ohio State may even be favored in this game, somewhere in the 3 to 6 point range. I wouldn't be surprised or shocked at all if Ohio State beats them by 10 points. We see weird things happen. I do think Penn State is going to be a really good team this year, the second best team or the first best team in the Big Ten. It's either them or Ohio State. I just have Penn State winning this game. They've got the best player maybe in America defensively in Micah Parsons at linebacker. He's their version of your Chase Young from last year. They've got to get better in some areas. Obviously, they've got to throw the ball better. They've got to defend against the throw better defensively. I just have a feeling this is the year that Penn State sneaks up and beats Ohio State. You're welcome to argue with me in the comments section from now until this game is played. I'm really not going to argue back with you. Ohio State's the better team and will be favored. The better team does not always win, though. Just doesn't happen that way. I seem to remember you losing to Iowa and Purdue and some of these other teams that no one knows. So just things happen. I've been higher on Penn State than everyone else has this offseason heading into 2020. I can't spend all that time talking about how good I think Penn State's going to be and then say, but yeah, they're going to lose to Ohio State again. I picked Penn State to beat you this year. If that makes you mad, be sure and type about it down below. I'm a James Franklin believer. I think this is the year he gets it done and possibly even makes it into the playoffs. But if you win that game, and here's the other thing. Well, we'll save that for the end. I'll come back to that in a minute. Then you host Nebraska, win. I'm not falling for the Nebraska banana in the tailpipe routine thing that I did last year where I was, Scott Frost year 2, Adrian Martinez is going to win the Heisman, and look what Scott Frost did at Central Florida. Nebraska's going 11-2 and competing to win. No, I'm not falling for all that. Nebraska was a terrible team last year. Somehow, it didn't appear possible, but they somehow figured out a way to get worse in Scott Frost's second year than they were in his first year. Yeah, I don't know how the hell they did it, but they did. I'm not picking Nebraska to beat any good teams this year, especially not a team as good as Ohio State. If I'm going to be wrong about Nebraska, it's going to be because I picked them to lose and they won, not because I picked them to win and they lost. I'm not falling for it. You beat Nebraska without a problem. Indiana, I think Indiana's got some potential this year, not to win 10 games or the division or whatever, but maybe to upset one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten. I don't think it'll be you. I think you beat Indiana. Back-to-back road games again here. So twice this year with the back-to-back road games at Maryland, at Illinois. Maryland's another team I think is going to beat somebody they're not supposed to. Don't let it be you. Let me repeat that. Don't let it be you. Was it Mike Loxley? I like what he's got going on up there. He's doing some things recruiting that a lot of people didn't see coming. They picked up Pineapple Jr. out of Tuscaloosa, Tua's little brother there, the Baga. But I think you win this year on the road at Maryland. At Illinois, they knocked off Wisconsin last year. Can they beat another one of the big boys this year at home and knock off Ohio State? No. Shout out to Lovie Smith, though, the Black Santa Claus. Biggest win Illinois had since the invention of Illinois. Last year when they beat Wisconsin, not happening this year against Ohio State. You'll beat them. And you close thing up with Michigan. And there's literally nothing to say about this game. You're beating Michigan. You get them at home, doesn't matter. You can play them on the moon. You can play them on the roof of a Big Lots. You could come here to my grandmother's garage and play right over there. It really would not matter. There's zero chance I'm ever picking Michigan to beat Ohio State again until it actually happens. That's another thing I've been tricked about year after year, is believing that this is the year that Jim Harbaugh figures out what he's doing, manages to beat a rival and win a division, things he's never done as a head coach. I'm not falling for it anymore. You will spank Michigan just like you normally do. That's it for the Ohio State preview and prediction video. I've got you going 11-1 in the regular season. Now, Two things. Yes, you're capable of beating Penn State. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you beat them. I think you're a better team, and I think you'll be favored. Just have a feeling this is the year Penn State gets over the hump. That's it. That's all there is to it. Here's number two. If you do that, if you go 11-1, or whatever it ends up being, 8-1, because you're not playing conference games, if you have just a one loss and it's on the road at Penn State, and Penn State's undefeated or one loss, you could be in a situation where you have two Big Ten teams get in the playoffs. Ohio State, if this happens this way, Ohio State could be the Alabama of 2017. In 2017, Alabama went 11-1 in the regular season. Their one loss was to Auburn, and Auburn won the division and got into the SEC title game. Alabama still made the playoffs even though they didn't win their division and didn't play in the title game. They were sitting there at 11-1, and their only loss was a close one to a top 10 team. If you're sitting at 11-1 and you don't make the Big Ten title game and your only loss is on the road to Penn State and it's a close loss, you've got a good chance of getting into the playoffs, in my opinion. Especially if Oklahoma happens to lose a couple of games, or if the Pac-12 can't get a team in again. There are several scenarios in which you could lose to Penn State, not win the division, but still get into the college football playoff. And I think the Big Ten is good enough as a whole to make the argument that they deserve to have two teams in if it came down to those two particular teams. Like I said, yes, I think the SEC is the best conference in football. I'm not going to apologize for that. I think that's the case. I also think it's true that the Big Ten is clearly the second best, and there's a huge gap from 2 to 3. The SEC and the Big Ten, in my opinion, have separated themselves from the rest of college football. I know Clemson is elite. They're one of, if not the best programs in America. But you can't ignore the fact that the other 13 teams in the ACC are absolute doo-doo, because they are. No one remembers the last time the Pac-12 got in the playoffs. Spoiler alert, 2014. Washington. And the Big 12 is Oklahoma and a bunch of nobodies named Texas. So it's the SEC and the Big Ten and then everyone else. So yes, you could get two teams in. If it works out that way, depending on what happens in some other conferences, you'd be able to make a legit argument to get two teams in my mind. I think Ohio State is one of the best 4 or 5 teams in America, hands down. No question, no doubt about it. They are loaded. I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields ends up with a national championship and a Heisman Trophy this year. I don't think anyone will be surprised if that happens. So I'm extremely high on Ohio State. Some people aren't going to watch this part of the video. They're just fast forwarding to the part where I put a red box in Penn State, and they're in the comment section right now telling me I'm an idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about. Guess what? You're right. I've never even seen a game.